or text me 0414 000 848.
The Leader of the House on a point of order.
Mr Speaker.
Well, look, I don't think anyone would argue that Parliament in Canberra, behaviourally or verbally, is a pleasant place to be. Let's go to our female panel. From the Labor Party, Tanya Plibersek, the former Deputy Leader. I must make a comment, by the way, as an aside here. As a measure of the immaturity of some people reporting on federal politics, she's still referred to as the Deputy Leader. Can someone get up to scratch? And Sen Fierravanti-Wells, a senator from New South Wales who's put a lot of time and intellectual resources into the aged care issue. Firstly, to you, Tanya, can I just ask you to comment on an email from one of my viewers which says this, quote, RIP the rule of law. Now the law is in the hands of any group that has a grievance and rallies and demands that their cause is just and above the law. No need for courts anymore. The media and the mob are now the law. Tanya, you presumably agree with that?
Well, Alan, you know that I, of course, support the rule of law, but you know, and we've discussed it before, that our laws don't properly support victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment. The reason that Mick Fuller was talking about that consent act today is because the police are struggling to jail rapists. We know that only about 1 in 10 women who are raped in the state of New South Wales report to police. And of that 1 in 10, less than 3% go on to achieve a guilty conviction. Is it any wonder that people are angry about that?
Well, we know they're angry. We know they're angry. That's not the point. Who should resolve the anger? That's why we've got courts. I mean, you persist. Your leader persists about this independent. Hang on. Your leader persists about this independent inquiry into Christian Porter. Now, shouldn't a reputable politician or a leader admit that the way this matter has been handled is damaging both sides of politics? The Parliament's being brought into disrepute. Public respect for it is being eroded, and at the end, there is still today no agreed reform as to how you advance the best interests for victims of sexual assault.
Alan, an independent inquiry may well clear Christian Porter. The former Solicitor General has said such an inquiry would be perfectly proper. The New South Wales Bar Association has said such an inquiry could be properly done.
The matter will be heard in the courts of the land.
This is important. Alan, this is important. Christian Porter himself established an inquiry into Dyson Hayden, the former High Court judge, when he was a commissioner on the Trade Union Royal Commission, to see whether he'd sexually harassed anyone in that role. I mean, these sort of independent inquiries.
The matter now, though,
happened in
the matter is now going to go. Tanya, the matter is now going to go to the courts. The matter is now going to go to the courts, and so.
How about John Howard's inquiry into Peter Hollingworth?
Never mind about that.
Alan,
the matter is before the courts, and this appears, when you compare it to Bill Shorten, as being done and used for political purpose. Conchetta, your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you the difference, Alan. There was a 10-month inquiry by police.
I know you've said all that before.
That spoke to the alleged victim and to Bill on multiple occasions.
And when the police decided not to proceed, everyone agreed that that was the end of it. The police have decided here not to proceed, and you continue on for political reasons.
Not everyone.
Now, hang on,
Alan,
Tanya,
not everyone.
Conchetta.
Not the woman's family. Not the woman's family, and not her lawyer and not her friends.
Let's hear from Conchetta.
Well, Alan, the rule of law must prevail. Now, Christian Porter has commenced defamation proceedings. I think this is a clear strategy on his part to clarify the legal issues. I only hope, and we've discussed this before, I only hope that the South Australian coroner now takes carriage of this matter, proceeds as he has indicated that he will, and I think that that will be in the best interests of all the parties involved. But above all, the rule of law must prevail.
Well, while you're here, I mean, should there not be some simple answers forthcoming on the Brittany Higgins matter? One, who let 2 young people into the office of the Defence Minister in the early hours of the morning when they were both under the weather? Shouldn't, Conchetta, we know if the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and Principal Private Secretary spoke to Brittany Higgins? And shouldn't we know the nature of the discussions? Do you concede, because you're part of the government, that until we get those answers, people will think there's a cover-up?
Well, absolutely, Alan. I agree with you. There is definitely a security perspective to this matter. And as Linda Reynolds told the Senate on the 23rd of February, she didn't speak to Scott Morrison, she didn't speak to Michaelia Cash, but she did have a discussion with the then Special Minister of State, who, as we know at the time, was Alex Hawke. Now, I think it's important to know, well, what was the nature of the discussion? Was advice given? Was that advice followed? These are important issues that need to be clarified.
Quick comment from you, Tanya.
Well, it just looks like a cover-up, Alan. The head of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet completed his inquiry into sports rorts in 2 weeks. It's now been a month. He still hasn't apparently worked out who in the Prime Minister's office knew and whether or not they informed the Prime Minister. We asked every day this week whether the Prime Minister had inquired into whether his media unit are behind the briefing out of negative criticism, rumours about Brittany Higgins' loved ones, as she said on Monday at the rally that she attended in Canberra. We've asked him 4 days in a row, and he's not prepared to ask his own media unit whether they were undermining Brittany Higgins' loved ones.
Okay, well, let me ask you a
While the
question.
Prime Minister's out publicly supporting her and apologising, they're out trying to discredit the people who are helping and supporting her.
It's very
Why won't he even ask?
The whole
Why won't
thing,
he ask
the whole
his media
scene,
unit?
the whole scene out there. People watching this think it's crook. Now, given to you, Tanya, given you, Penny Wong, and others are rightly indignant about the treatment of women in Parliament, can you listen to this part of a speech by Nicole Flint, the Liberal member for Boothby, who's leaving the Parliament, a talented woman, because she's been subjected to horrendous sexist and misogynistic abuse, scrawled all over her campaign office, all of which was reported on radio, TV and print before the last election and since. Here is Nicole Flint.
Well, I say to the Leader of the Opposition, I will not be lectured by you. I will not be lectured by your side of politics about the treatment of women in this place. I asked the Leader of the Opposition, where was he and where was his predecessor and where were the senior Labor women when Get Up Labor and the union supporters chased, harassed and screamed at me everywhere I went in the lead up to the 2019 election? Where were they when their supporters were abusing me time after time on Twitter and on my Facebook page? Where were they when I was stalked by a creepy old man who worked hand in hand with Get Up?
Tanya, do you think it's credible when you say you didn't know this was going on?
Look, Alan, I really feel for Nicole Flint. I think what she described to the Parliament is shocking, terrible treatment, and it's vile. And if I knew about it...
And you didn't know it was happening?
Well enough.
The whole world knew it was
You know
happening.
me well enough, Alan,
We talked about it.
to know that I would call it out, whoever it was,
Well, you
doing
didn't.
it, wherever it was happening.
You didn't.
But-
Conchetta, you didn't. What is
Well,
it?
no, wait a minute, Alan.
Hang on.
You're suggesting
But you
that
didn't
I'm not telling the truth about not knowing.
Now, what I'm saying,
Alan,
I'll tell you what I'm thinking, Tanya. I'll tell you what I'm saying. You and Penny Wong and Christina Keneally thought there was political advantage in having Nicole Flint dealt with in this way because winning an election was more
simply
important
not
than
true.
Nicole Flint.
That is simply not true, Alan, and I'm actually deeply offended by that suggestion.
Well, Tanya,
I've had
everyone in
death threats,
Australia
I've
was
had
talking
rape
about it.
threats.
We
I've had-
interviewed
listen
people
to me,
here about
Alan.
it. Everyone
Alan,
knew you
listen-
didn't.
Alan, listen to me. I've had death threats. I've had rape threats. I've had someone threaten to kill my mother. I've had someone write to my home address and say that they hope my 3 children die of painful childhood cancers. This has happened not just to me. I'm not complaining about myself, Alan. This has happened to every single woman in the Parliament. I would be amazed if it hasn't happened to Connie. It is disgusting. It is disgusting, and it's
I know, we know
And the
that.
reason we
I'm
don't-
just
listen
concerned
to me,
why
Alan.
all of you people were
Alan,
silent. Can I just play another
listen to
extract
me,
because we're
Alan.
running
The
out of time?
reason-
Listen to this from
No,
Nicole
listen
Flint.
to
Hang
me,
on, no,
please.
wait.
It's important.
Nicole Flint. No,
No, I'd
Tanya.
like to finish this,
Tanya.
Alan.
Tanya. I'm running the show here.
You're
Just
talking
listen to
over-
Nicole Flint.
And you're not...
Nicole.
Here's a quote from former Deputy Leader Tanya Plibersek from January 2019. So in the lead up to the last federal election, women deserve to be safe and valued at home, on the streets, in our workplaces and in everything they do. And a quote from Senator Penny Wong. Of course, bullying and intimidation in any workplace are unacceptable. Senator Wong responded to my committee evidence by attacking me. Today in this place, the member for Sydney said she was unaware of any harassment by Get Up of the member for Boothby until very recently. I find the member for Sydney's claim hard to believe, as I was one of only 7 Liberal Party members on GetUp's federal election hit list. I was the only woman, the only backbencher, and the only one who is not a current or former cabinet minister.
Concetta, isn't it valid to ask, were these Labor women, Tanya, Penny Wong, Christina Keneally, all in leadership positions of the Labor Party at the last election, and none of them said anything? Concetta.
Well, I knew very well what was going on because I worked on Tony Abbott's campaign in Warringah, so I knew exactly what GetUp were doing and the aggressive tactics that they were embarking on and they were undertaking. And after the election, I was very critical of GetUp, particularly over what they did. Look, Tanya, I have to say, I want to raise with you Nicole Flint's submission to the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters for October 2019. Yeah. GetUp, the unions and the Labor Party ran an aggressive, relentless and deeply personal campaign against me. Now, the findings of JSCEM were so bad that they have now recommended a new offence in the Electoral Act called electoral violence. Correct. So how you can stand there and say you didn't know and you were the deputy leader at the time baffles me completely.
Well, Tanya, I just want to come to you. We could go on forever here. These are very serious issues.
Alan,
Sir Thomas More. Sir Thomas More was a 16th century social philosopher and statesman, and he argued that silence betokens consent. How does that apply?
As I say, Alan, I'm actually really pleased that Nicole has raised this. I think it's a vital conversation for us to have. But I tell you the danger here. The trolls feed on this. The more women like me talk about the threats that we've had in public, the more threats we get. There are so many crazies out there. I've had to have Australian Federal Police at my events because I've had what they politely call a fixated person threatening to kill me. So I know exactly how she feels, and the idea that I would in any way condone this is so deeply offensive. I have spent decades of my life trying to make the Labor Party, politics more generally, our public discourse in this country better. I want it to be better, not just for me and not just for politicians, but for those women who work in restaurants, in buses, the first-year medical intern, the new law graduate, all the women who cop sexual harassment in the workplace and this sort of misogynist language on the internet, from trolls. It happens, Alan, at epidemic.
I know.
At epidemic
but not,
rates.
There wasn't one woman.
Rates.
There wasn't one woman spoke in defence of Pauline Hanson when she had the most violent abuse dished out to her. Look, it's a big issue, and I know Tanya Plibersek has just spoken there. I'm well aware of the issues she's talking about. And there are crazies out there, and they write death threats to sort of people. This has to be taken very, very seriously. It's been a very difficult subject. I thank you both for addressing it, and we'll talk again next week, hopefully, about something a little more pleasant. But thank you both for your time.
Let's hope so.
Tanya Plibersek and
Thanks, Alan.
Fierravanti-Wells back after the break with a rather interesting guest.